Hey YouTube. Hey, I'm back again. Wasn't planning on making another video quite so quickly, but I received my first comment yesterday, and the gentleman left a comment saying that he had only watched the first 2.5 minutes or so of the post I made, and that was pretty much it. It was nothing new that he hadn't heard before, and that there was no such thing as a Christian homosexual. And I guess that's what I want to talk about. So the question of whether or not a person can be an open homosexual and a practicing Christian at the same time is a really complicated question. First, you have to start off with, what does it mean to even be a Christian? And that's something that denominations have been arguing for the last 2,000 plus years. And I really don't know if I could give a satisfactory answer to what it means to be a Christian in a video blog, but here's a few things that I'd like to say about it. First of all, when you start talking about what defines a Christian, different denominations will have different definitions. But I believe that what this gentleman is specifically referring to is a person who has gone through a salvation experience as being saved by grace. This is where things get really tricky, because I don't feel comfortable passing judgment on whether or not if a person possesses salvation. I believe that that's a very intimate experience that only the person involved and God can really know definitively whether or not if a person possesses. Now, with all that being said, Jesus did give us some helpful insights to be able to determine what a believer might look like. First of all, he said that he was the good shepherd and his sheep would know his voice. The problem with this is that you guys can't really judge me or know my heart to know whether or not if I hear his voice. Just like I can't judge you to know whether or not if you hear his voice. Another thing that Jesus said when determining whether or not if a teaching was good and trustworthy or something we should even pay attention to was whether or not if it bore good fruit. He said that a good tree couldn't bear bad fruit and that a bad tree couldn't bear good fruit. The problem with applying this towards the actions of someone that you don't really know, like say someone you just seen on an internet blog, is that you're not part of my daily life to really understand whether or not if I'm bearing good fruit. But let's take a look at the teaching that homosexuality is a sin and that homosexuality is wrong. Can you name one good fruit that has come from this theology? I can't think of any. I can think of a few bad fruits though. It has divided our nation, it has divided our families, it has divided our congregations. It has given people the belief that violence and attacks against people who are created in the image of God is perfectly okay and acceptable. And let's not forget about those countries that believe that they can cure homosexuality out of women by raping them. That doesn't seem like a good fruit to me, does it to you? Or how about all of the hundreds and thousands of young children that are committing suicide every single day because they're being told by society, by their family, by their churches that they are an abomination? How would you be able to live if you believed that something that you couldn't control was something that God hated, that He created you in a manner and a form and a shape that He despised? And that's not even close to the end of the list of all the bad fruit that this theology has bore. But let's go back to what it means to be a Christian. Around the world, there are millions upon millions of people who identify themselves as being both Christian and homosexual. Do all of these people have it wrong? And that's not even to say all of the different denominations that do believe that homosexuality is a sin, and those who are part of the reparative therapy school of thought. They even admit that you can be homosexual and Christian, that it is a temptation and a struggle just like any other sin. And so, sir, your statement that there's no such thing as Christian homosexuals may have been just a little bit too rash. But that idea and that school of thought is not completely alien to me. Before I came out, I was a member of a congregation that, like you, agreed that you cannot be an open homosexual and a Christian. And I can tell you from my own personal experience that there is nothing more painful than having your pastor, a man who is in spiritual authority, a man who you trust to teach you and guide you in the ways of truth, to look you in the face and to tell you that you have lost your salvation. So I would ask that you would go back and look at these verses in the context in which they are used. Go back to the original words and the original languages. Go back and study the culture and the time and what exactly did an abomination mean. Go back and study this before you are just so quick to write off any experience that you could possibly have with a person who may be just a little bit different from you. There's also a really good video out there on YouTube called The Bible and Homosexuality, where a gentleman named Matthew Vines goes through the passages and kind of explains them one by one. I agree with about 90% of what he said, and although I think he could have dove a little bit deeper into Leviticus, at an hour and 7 minutes, I guess it was kind of long enough. On the other hand, I do commend you for being very cautious about which doctrine you are willing to accept. Jesus himself said that in the end, there will be tons of people who will come to him and say, Lord, Lord, didn't we do miracles? Didn't we heal the sick? Didn't we do all of these wonderful things? And he'll say, depart from me. I know you not. The things you've done are unauthorized. Just because I know verses, just because this gentleman Matthew Vines knows verses, doesn't mean that you should necessarily accept that. I would ask that you give all things a very strenuous critique before you accept them as truth. One of the things that was so commendable about the Bereans was that every day they were studying the scriptures to see if what Paul was teaching them was actually true. So I think that it's very good to come with a cynical mind, to come with a little bit of skepticism, whatever you hear any teaching from any person. You should always be led by the Holy Spirit to give you understanding and to give you wisdom into what His Word actually teaches. What I have said from the beginning to all of my friends is that I am open to God ever convicting me that homosexuality is wrong, but I will never be convinced by the theories. Another passage in the Bible states that no one can say that Jesus is Lord except through the power of the Holy Spirit. When I departed from my congregation, I sent a message to the leadership of the church, blessing each and every one of them, blessing the church, because I do believe that they are really good, honest, integral people who are just wrong on this one issue. I don't believe that dismissing me from the church was an easy decision for them by any means, but I believe that they were rather holding on to their faith and to the traditions that they had been taught and doing what they thought that they had to do to live out their own salvation with fear and trembling. And so I tell you that whole story to tell you this. The people in my church really genuinely loved me, and I still love them even though we don't communicate anymore. Their only concern was a very sincere concern over the state of my eternal salvation. And so in a meager attempt to offer them peace, I offer to you this very same profession of faith that I gave to them. I believe that Jesus is Lord. I believe in one God, three parts, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. That at the beginning of the world, Jesus was with God. That through the power of the Holy Spirit, He was conceived to the Virgin Mary, where He was born as fully man, fully God. I believe that He lived a life performing signs and miracles and wonders, healing the sick and casting out demons and setting the captives free. I believe that He came and taught the truth and corrected some of the false beliefs held by the religious leaders of that time. And I believe that He was so moved by compassion and love for people on a scale that is infinite and unfathomable, to the degree that He became sin, that He bore on Himself every sin that every person has ever committed, that He died an unjust death for you and for me. And at the moment that He cried out, "It is finished," that it was truly and completely and totally finished. I believe that He rose from the dead 3 days later and is now seated in heaven with the Father, and sent the Holy Spirit to come and reside in us, to guide us, to strengthen us, to give us wisdom and knowledge, and to empower us to do the good deeds that we were created to do. I believe that when I am at my lowest point, when I am the most horrendous person possible, that if I confess my sins, God is faithful and just, because it's who He is, to forgive me of my sins. And He removes them as far as the east is from the west, never to be seen or associated with me again. Not because of anything that I have done or earned, but because of the sacrifice of Jesus Christ. I don't believe that I can add anything to that sacrifice to make myself any more worthy, because I'm not. But as a believer, I am adopted into the family of God. I believe that I was fearfully and wonderfully made, that I was created with a hope and a purpose, and that I am empowered by the Holy Spirit to fulfill the call that only God knows all my life. And so, friend, I urge you to be very careful when you make a bold statement such as there's no such thing as Christian homosexuals. Because what you're saying is that every time that the Holy Spirit has empowered one of the homosexual Christians to do something, you're saying that that wasn't God that did it. And that is what Jesus cautioned about being blasphemy against the Holy Spirit. To say that God didn't do something that he did. And so I caution you very much to please be careful before you make so bold a statement in the future. I urge you and encourage you to be a good Berean, to give this matter, as much study as any other issue in the Bible. To research every single day whether or not what you hear from me or from anyone else is in accordance to what the scriptures teach us. So I'm sorry that that video was a little bit longer than I intended it to be and a little bit more serious. I do hope to make the next video a little bit more fun, but I felt that it was a very important topic that we needed to talk about. And so I want to hear what you guys have to say on it, because as much as I think my opinion matters, I think your opinion matters. So I want you guys to leave a comment down below, and I'll be sure to make sure that they get read. And I hope to see you guys later in the week. If you guys heard any scratching or growling in the background, that was my precious puppy Archimedes. Say hi! And he is ready for his walk. So I will see you guys later. And as always, remember to not limit yourself by your experiences, because the world is so much bigger than any one of us. Till then, take care.